This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice. It exists to entertain and to inform. Welcome, everyone. This is Poor Historians, a podcast misadventuring into the archives of medical history and beyond. This is the show where we dissect a history of medicine topic to learn a little something about how medicine got to be the way that it is today. I'm Dr. Max, and I'm joined here by my good friends and colleagues, Dr. Aaron.
Hello.
All right, and Dr. Mike.
Hi. And Max, I think one of these days, maybe it'd be really nice of you to just introduce me first before Aaron.
We can't.
Or Alba before.
Hey,
is it alphabetical?
My job. It is, well, no, because when we started the show, it was Aaron, Max, and Mike, and that's so you came after. And hi, Alba. Alba's here too. Hello, Alba.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Alba's our medical history intern. Mike, we have a process, and you're making it difficult. Before we get started with the normal parts of the show, let's take a few moments to welcome and thank a new member to our fantastical medical history House of Medicine. Alba, I wondered if specifically we could single you out and ask you to give an improv heartfelt thank you for our newest resident level patron, Carrie, in the style of an Oscar acceptance speech.
Oh my God, Carrie, I thank you so much. Thank you so much for choosing us. Thank you so much for recognizing the dedication and thank you.
Man. That was...
You got to keep going. I was looking for Oscar, move on music. I was going to play that.
Should start doing that.
I know I'm going to forget somebody. Oh my gosh.
I'm
there it is.
Max.
You. Yep.
I forgot to thank. Yeah.
For all the editing work Max does.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very apropos. I appreciate that. But Carrie, there you go. New thing. You got to be the first Alba improv. Thank you. And I hope you appreciate it. That was pretty awesome. Mike, do you have any words of wisdom for our newest member of the House of Medicine?
Yeah, so July has come and gone.
I think we're still in July.
July is still here. And many of you just a couple weeks ago had your first day actually attempting to not murder patients inadvertently. And
I assume you're talking to the residents and interns that are not in the medical history house.
But no, this is the same thing, right? Because we can inadvertently...
if you subscribe to our Patreon, you don't get to practice medicine. I think
you do.
How it works.
No, I just saw a thing. There's a CME thing.
It's a medical license. It's actually...
I don't know if I have to beat this.
Don't get sick.
20 episodes, yeah. Then you,
all right, Mike,
get an honorary.
What's your advice there?
My advice would be to listen to 20 episodes and become a physician after that.
Okay. Well, there you go, Carrie.
If you wish,
listen to that advice.
You'll know how to trephinate. I mean, that
how hard can it be?
Aaron, you're gonna make me Google this early. Trephinate.
No, you have to go back to episode 12.
Oh, okay.
If you enjoy what we do here and you'd like to join the PHPod community we're building over there on Patreon, please do check us out at www.patreon.com/4historianspodcast, or go to the link in the show notes and get access to that bonus content, episodes, behind the scenes stuff, and all that good stuff. I said stuff twice and I hate it.
Are we worried at all that people are going to assume that we are like a chemical company because the pH pod, like an acid base type thing? Or is it a thing?
No, we're not worried about that.
I'm not personally worried about it. And I mean, I'm fairly worried about a lot of things around the podcast. And I don't think that's
on the podcast? Oh,
even chemists aren't going to listen to a pH pod to be like,
if you're a chemist out there and thought this was the wrong show for you when you actually started listening to it, let us know.
I mean, what was your reaction to the pH pod question?
I saw a great chemistry meme recently. They're like, it was sodium and it was like it might have been a wolf, and then chloride like reacts with water and it's the Incredible Hulk, and then Na, like sodium and chloride together, and it was Shrek.
I don't know.
33% of us laughed.
Wait.
Well, as far as housekeeping goes, our patrons, who again get a little bit of that behind the scenes stuff ahead of time, are aware, but well, let the rest of our listeners know we're going to be throttling down our schedule of releases a little bit, because it turns out that medical fellowships are a lot of work and time. That was a surprise to me. And since I do the editing on the show and that sort of thing, adding that third episode every month was a lot of extra time. And for the time being, what we're going to do is while I'm in fellowship, we're going to go down to 2 episodes a month. So one every other week. The history episodes is what we're going to focus on. And so the last bonus TV show episode we got will be the last one for a little while. Now we're going to try to add in some extra content to these to make them a little bit longer as we go across, and my work schedule kind of tempers down a little bit. But I'm gonna focus on the hospital medicine-y stuff and have to just cut down that one extra episode. So just to explain what's going on there, I'll get more used to all these work hours. It's different. Resonance, good stuff. Either way, enough of that. We have a fan in need of super helpful advice. So are you all ready for our next segment, the non-medical opinions portion of the show?
Yep, as ready as a July resident. Here I am. I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right, folks.
I got my stack of small little reference manuals shoved in my pocket. I got my reflex hammer. I got my tuning fork. I got my stethoscope. I got my snack.
What kind of snack?
I'd always get a big cookie, man. One big cookie, shove it in the until I graduated up to
you get the graham
rolls.
crackers and the peanut butter, and you just like carry it
Yep,
around.
that's your backup. Yeah,
Yep.
I used to make ICU mimosas too, just Sprite and orange juice, hospital ice in a styrofoam cup at 3 a.m. It's pretty good.
Well, speaking of things that are delicious, that's a pretty good lead in for our question, I think. So before we talk about the main topic, we're going to give a non-medical opinion. This is the segment where we, since we don't give medical advice on the show, we give the next best thing. We use our medical and medical adjacent knowledge to give a lucky listener the best pearls of wisdom on a topic that doesn't really have to do with medicine. And so we have a pretty fun and interesting question, I think, today. Alba, what you got?
The asker is Jay, who lost a toenail after a pedicure. She wants to know what she should do with the now disembodied, otherwise perfectly good toenail.
That's, if I had a nickel for every time this comes up. Aaron, what would you do with a disembodied toenail?
Oh, this is easy. So what you need to do is you paint a little face on it and maybe some eyebrows, some sort of expression, and then you super glue it to your dashboard, right around your steering wheel. So it's like looking out at you. And then you always have a friend when you're out on the road. You have a little friend with you, and it helps prevent road rage because your friend is there. And if you do the eyebrows right and your friend looks kind of quizzical or happy or not angry, you don't want to do an angry toenail, then you should be good. Yeah.
Excellent.
Wait, but then when you turn the wheel, it's going to turn upside down, and this smile will turn into a frown.
Well, you got to put it on behind the steering wheel, like by the speedometer or something like that.
Oh, not
on the
steering wheel.
dashboard.
I was
On the
picturing it on
dashboard,
the steering
maybe,
wheel.
yeah. You could do that.
Don't make this question weird, okay? Just
Don't make this question weird. Oh, I'm so sorry.
What would you do with it, Mike?
It depends on the toenail, I guess.
Okay.
This is a big toenail, I thought, right?
Yeah.
I did not know
I
that,
assumed
actually.
pinky toenail because I think a big toenail would be tough to lose in a pedicure. I would say, if it's a big toenail, and let's say that you're worried that your eyelashes are too thin and sparse and you're sick of using too much mascara, you could just cut little arcs off the toenail and glue those to your eyelashes and paint them black. And then you never have to use eyeliner. Is that the thing? If it's your pinky toenail, I'd recommend gluing it to the tip of a Q-tip so you can really get to the deep recesses in your ears when you're cleaning.
Wow.
Wow.
All right. It's weirder than the steering wheel thing. Nicely done. Elba, do you have a normal response to a toenail question?
Yeah, I've lost a few toenails in my life. I'm not sure how or why. And the first time it happened, I'll tell you what I did. What you do is you take the toenail and you look at it with curiosity and fear that your body is falling apart and everything is going to fall apart. And then you have a funeral for it and pray that it grows back.
That's not bad.
I was 12.
Wait, this actually happened?
Yeah.
Did it grow back?
Yeah, I have all my
Did you check the box after and see if it was still there?
It snuck out and reimplanted itself.
A zombie grew out of the ground.
I kind of want to exhume that toenail someday, but I don't have much to add beyond that. I like Aaron. I liked your idea of painting something on it. I would paint a little design, and since one of my hobbies is woodworking, and with that comes some epoxy work, I would suspend it in an epoxy mold and basically paint a design, suspend it in an epoxy mold, and then I would give it to somebody you care about as a amulet to wear around
you
their
would
neck.
give it to somebody that Aaron cares about?
No, this is
Oh,
for
geez.
Jay, the listener. Jay, if you have somebody in your life that would appreciate
You would give it to
toenail,
someone that Jay cares about? How that's really creepy, Max, that you know.
Hey, Jay, I got
Poor
a
Jay.
painted toenail
I hate you
for
all.
you, suspended in epoxy. Give it to someone you care about.
Well, somewhere in all of that, Jay, I'm sure was extremely helpful advice that you should probably disregard. But if you don't, I hope you find something to do with that toenail, and please let us know. I'm going to be curious for the rest of my days to know what you ended up doing with it. If you, dear listener, would like to get our non-medical opinion on something, please check out the show notes. There'll be a link down there to send us a question, or go to our website. We've got a form on there, and happy to see what we're coming up with. We have turns out kind of an odd fan base, and I'm okay with this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with this.
Well, the
That's
other thing,
true.
you could make a spork out of a big toenail.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You have to
You
glue
are
a
one crafty feller,
popsicle
Mike.
stick to it first.
Mm.
Like glue the big toenail on the end of a
Bear
popsicle
Grylls
stick.
would be
and then-
jealous, yeah.
Mike, you wrote some stuff. You researched some stuff. You
I
have
researched
some
some stuff.
hard-hitting journalism,
Mm-hmm.
historianism.
Yes. I'm like the David Blaine of information gathering.
I am sitting back. You know that ad for whatever, what was the stereo company where the guy was getting blown away by the sound?
Oh,
Bose?
classic.
I am. Was it Bose? I don't think it was.
I think it
Bose,
was
but
Bose.
I am.
Pioneer? Kenwood?
I'm sitting in my chair, ready to be blown away by a torrent of information, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Maxell. It's Maxell.
So,
anyway,
and
go
again,
ahead.
the way that I do
Thank you,
things,
Aaron.
I keep things close to the chest. It's going to be a case. All right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
A 69-year-old male is brought to the ER by his wife
Nice.
for evaluation of concerning neurologic symptoms. He woke up from sleep. He had slurred speech and an unsteady gait. And that's all the information you get.
Are you sure it's...
Why didn't he just adjust the hinges so the gate was like back on kilter?
G-A-I-T.
Wait, so he has what? Slurred speech, unsteady gait, and what else?
Mhm.
So
That's
he's
it.
not walking.
Those are the big
steadily.
things that she sees. Yep.
When did it start?
He was fine yesterday. She noticed that when he woke up from a nap, like
Well,
6 p.m.
So it's been going on for like 12 hours?
As far as we know, yeah, it was last seen normal at 3 p.m. Wakes up at 6. They don't come in until about 9. So it's about 6 hours after symptom onset.
Does he have a headache?
No headache.
What's his blood pressure?
136/92.
That's weird.
how many medications does he take?
None. Actually, no, he takes Lipitor
Cholesterol.
and Norvasc for blood pressure,
Hmm.
but he didn't take it today.
I mean, I think I've seen this patient like 15 times in the last week.
Mhm.
It's,
You
Yeah.
can't talk about Aaron's patients on the show. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
How about vomiting, nausea, anything like that?
No vomiting. Feels a little nauseous.
What about like sensory findings, like neurophysical exam findings?
He's got weird tingly feet that he's had for a while, about 5 years.
Are all the
Um,
toenails there?
All the toenails are there. There are no wounds.
Okay.
how does he walk?
Unsteady. Kind of shuffles a little bit. He's a little like he banged into the wall.
Can he
Kind of
tandem
chuckled
gait?
about it.
Can he do the perp walk?
He
the drunk-
cannot.
not the perp
No,
walk,
he
the
doesn't do
drunk
very
walk.
well. No, yeah, he struggles with that.
That's the you've been pulled over and you got to walk the straight line walk.
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, he
That's
does
the
not
one.
walk in a straight line.
The symptoms are on both sides.
Both sides, yep. Yeah, normal vision, no headache, slurred speech, no focal weakness. So everything is all of his extremities are moving about the same. It's unsteady when you try to get him up.
How much did he drink this morning?
He said nothing.
That's what he says.
Does he live in Wisconsin? Because
He does.
May not believe it.
Lies.
He does live in Wisconsin.
Okay. All right.
Right. What's your differential?
Stroke.
Stroke.
Tumor.
Okay.
Okay, that was the first thing that popped in my head, but I was like, well, if they're not saying it, maybe I'm an idiot.
No,
we're
we
just-
were all saying it. I was trying to struggle to think what I'd do next besides leave the room and put the stroke order set in. And
Well, it could be tox stuff. So I mean, we're talking about
So-
the alcohol and that
Yep.
sort of thing, and that's
And
you know
He does have a history of
ingestions?
alcohol abuse, but he's not had anything to drink for years. And his wife is adamant that he has not had anything to
Okay.
drink because she watches him like a hawk.
24 hours a day.
Most of the time, she's always checking on him.
Okay.
So workup.
We're going to check a B12 level.
Well, you're not going to get
Stat
that back.
B12. No,
Yeah.
just kidding.
Stat B12, he said.
It's a
stats.
B12. If B12 is deficient, it can cause some neurologic issues, including sometimes some difficulty walking. But I'm being facetious because we wouldn't do it in the emergency department.
Yeah, but you do a head scan.
Yeah, you do your neuro stuff. So you do a CAT scan of the head. You're checking an
negative.
EKG for stroke causing rhythm.
Normal.
I would check some electrolytes too. Make sure that sodium's okay. And
Yeah, sodium is 127.
it's like
So
a little
low?
low, but it's not
Sugar's normal.
catastrophically low.
And you said the stuff that would indicate a stroke comes back negative?
Yeah, the initial screening test. He's starting to get a little bit more agitated while he's there.
Can he pee okay?
He's been peeing a lot.
Oh, he's been peeing a lot. But but he doesn't have his sugar is normal. You said
Sugar's normal. Yep.
Okay.
What's his urinalysis look like?
It's clear or colorless urine.
Is it dilute?
No ketones. It's dilute.
What's the odor off of it? Is a fine quaff or
It smells like piss.
Not
That's what dilute
concentrated.
means?
No, dilute just so you can have concentrated urine or dilute urine. And
Yeah,
if it's
diluted.
inappropriately dilute, then maybe his body's spilling it for some reason.
Not inappropriate dilute.
Mm.
So now he gets to the point where his symptoms are better, and he's at the window and he's staring at you and he wants to go. And he's pissed that he's been there for so long. He's been there for an hour and 36 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to go. And his wife is just so apologetic.
Mm-hmm.
But she just wants to know, what's wrong with him, doctor? I'm not going to take him home. You need to give me an answer. Are there any other tests that you could sometimes do in these situations?
Absolutely not. Have a good day. No, just kidding.
Mm.
So you said he's been urinating a
MRI.
lot,
He has.
and his sodium's a little bit low.
Mhm.
He's acting weird and kind of goofy.
So
It's,
he's exhibiting a toxidrome.
Yeah.
Did we do a drug screen or no?
We'll do one. Yep. So this toxidrome is caused by a drug that can cause euphoria in smaller doses, but in larger doses can cause stupor, anterograde amnesia, mood swings, central nervous system depression, vomiting, aspiration, and death.
You said it wasn't alcohol.
It is alcohol.
No,
He's drunk.
He said that she said that
Blood
she
alcohol
watched
just
him
came
very
back.
carefully and he doesn't drink.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's the thing, that he's suffering from alcohol abuse. And often people will have codependency and they will cover for their loved ones and they want to believe that they're not drinking. But this guy's blood alcohol comes back at 0.35. He's talking to you. He decides he wants to leave. So he goes. Swears up and down they didn't have anything to drink. You tested the wrong blood. And on the way out, he's like, I do use a lot of Listerine. Maybe it's that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Almost this exact case have I seen so many times. We always, we do the stroke workup. You want to do the things to make sure that the patient is okay. And I've had patients tell me, I swear, doc, I've never blah, blah, blah. And we check it because sometimes it is the explanation. And even then, you're like, no, I haven't had a drink.
They're so often in denial that they'll carry that lie all the way through. And then they'll suggest that you tested someone else's blood. That's probably happened to me in my 20-year career. I don't know, 20 times, 30 times, way more than you'd think.
So the question is, like, I guess the spouse bringing him in is either in denial too, but I guess if she brought him in, then he's just really good at hiding it.
Yeah, because like real bad alcohol or alcohol abuse or alcoholism really like lives in the shadows. It can't exist like in a normal open type of setting. So these people often are like ultra secretive, very shameful about their drinking. And it's interesting. I came to the point because it was 4th of July. We're all drinking. It's a social thing, just having a couple of drinks. But then my brother was like, oh, you should just have a beer because like, we didn't have clean water to drink and people used to drink beer. And that was true. That just made me start to think like, I'm just going to look into the history of alcohol. Like when did we start drinking alcohol? Why do we drink? We know why we drink alcohol, but so it's just kind of interesting. And then I went down the wormhole, and then I ended up with this.
Okay, we're the history of the poison that is alcohol.
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
So, and then we'll touch a little bit on alcoholism, and that's where we could kind of like talk. And I think it'd be good to get Alba's perspective too, just from the psychosocial side. But alcohol has played a huge role throughout history, and it's even helped form cultures and civilizations. We're not sure exactly
by reproducing, people having alcohol and reproducing. Is that what you mean?
No, just like cultures will like form.
Okay.
Think about where we live, right? Our culture is formed really around alcohol. It's not around fish fries. It's not around diners. Like, it's the alcohol. It's in those establishments. Like people go out for a fish fry. What do they get?
Rye bread, coleslaw.
What's the drink?
Tartar sauce and copious amounts of alcohol.
Beer.
A brandy old fashioned.
Oh, gross. Those are gross.
Yeah, but that's or a whiskey
Max
or whatever.
doesn't believe in those.
No,
Yeah, so like
I take your point though. I take your point.
Yeah, a thing that happens. So again, it has helped form cultures, and in part helps form our culture.
I agree.
100%.
Right.
The number of times that when I tell people that my mom is Italian and she doesn't drink, everybody's surprised by that. Like, what? She's Italian and she doesn't drink wine? It's like, yeah, that's one of the number one things that you associate
With Italians?
Yeah.
Really?
Wait, are you kidding?
Yeah. Isn't it the Italian culture? I know it's like wine. Is it copious amounts of wine?
They like their wine. They like their wine. They like their beer. Yeah, but they don't drink like we drink. They drink they'll drink at lunch, but I'm talking like a half a cup of beer, like not even 8 ounces of beer. And so I remember telling a friend of mine when I was living over there that in the US, you can't, if you drink and drive, if your keys are in the ignition and you have a beer in the car, that you can get arrested. And he was like, what? So you can't just sit in your car and have like a sandwich and some beer for lunch? Like you could get arrested for that or whatever, basically that's illegal. I bet they'll get on you for it because it's so, drinking is so much part of the culture. But I think that it's like the normalized amount to drink is just that little bit with lunch or dinner.
Yeah. And maybe like people get to know what their tolerances are when they're younger.
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
Appropriate use. Like for us, we don't drink anything until we're 21. And then some people do tend to go a little bit crazy. And then you get to binge drinking where it's like, hard to stop. We'll talk a little bit more about like some of that stuff later. But they think alcohol was potentially consumed up to 100,000 years ago. I don't know why. There was one study where this guy looked at cave paintings. And he's like, they must have been drinking. Really. It's like, what the hell?
Is that literally the justification for
yes,
thought?
You can't have been sober when you drew this.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, they must have been drinking. Yeah, because it's just like, whatever.
That's not
only
a
a drunk guy would have
smudge.
painted
Come
that.
on.
Yeah. And maybe that's why they're so terrible. You'd think, okay, you've got this thing you're trying to recreate. Like, how does Michelangelo do that, hundreds of thousands of years later, where these guys, they couldn't even make it. It looks like a potato with sticks sticking out of it.
Right.
Oh, that's
because
a
they only
buffalo.
had sticks to draw with. And it's on rock. It's
They
on a
should have
stone.
invented paintbrushes then.
It's on a rock.
It's on them. Just because they were all drunk. That's why they couldn't do it.
Cave paintings suck.
Oh
that
my
is Mike's
God.
official position.
Mhm, yes.
I like it.
Do not
Petroglyphs are
recommend.
ass.
Oh, yeah. They're mid. Those are mid cave paintings. No cap. Okay, so 7,000 BCE is the actual earliest evidence of alcohol production. There's a Neolithic jar in China that they found that had, they think was like wine or something. It was fermented rice, honey, and fruit. Then 5,000 BCE, they found wine residue in Persian pottery. So 2,000 years later. And I don't know. So I know the character Gilgamesh from that one Marvel movie, and I've never read the story.
Sure.
Do you guys know the story?
Yeah, the Marvel movie is extremely historically accurate.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I actually did read it in college.
Did you? Okay. Can you summarize it briefly, or you don't have to?
Accurately or inaccurately?
Inaccurately.
I can do one of those two.
Whatever
pretty well,
you-
I think. Off the top of
Very
my head.
inaccurately.
I don't need to put you on the spot. I'm happy to fill in. I
Is
have
he
a
the guy
sentence.
did he have hair? I think he had hair that
He
was
had
part of
hair.
his
Yep.
strength.
He was like a
And,
lot of humans, or whatever he is.
Yeah, and stuff happened.
So he
and
was a
then he was a
primitive.
ruler.
And this is what I found online.
Okay,
I didn't read any more
into
into Gilgamesh. But yeah, he's a primitive, underdeveloped man who transforms into a cultured human being after drinking 7 cups of beer. That's apparently the story. And they were saying, like, you are going to become cultured if you drink beer. Beer back then had a very low alcohol content. So when we're thinking about, like, people drinking beer in lieu of drinking water, like in Europe, many, many years later, it's not the same. It's not like they're walking around drinking IPAs, because you have 2 of those and you are going to be absolutely blottoed.
Yeah,
These guys are drinking 1%. Yeah, they're drinking 1% alcohol beer. It's mostly water.
Did the like process of fermentation make the water safer?
It did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, because the bacteria in the yeast ate all the bacteria in the yeast.
So just drinking. Well, I mean, you're just drinking.
Did you say the bacteria and the yeast
I don't
ate
know.
all of the bacteria? Okay, I'm just checking. Okay.
Well, I do know. So I do have a previous homebrewing history. It was one of my hobbies before. And one of the interesting factoids I remember from at least multiple sources that I used back in the day, you can screw up a batch of beer by letting it get contaminated with like ambient bacteria and yeast. But with the exception of folks who are really immunocompromised, you really do not find any pathogens growing in a culture of alcohol. So you may find bacteria that are not pathogenic. So like bacteria that don't cause, manifestations of disease. You can just find bacteria that you don't want in there, and they make it taste gross and scuzzy, which is most of my batches of beer. But that's I can see where if you have low volume beer, it probably does have an antiseptic quality to it, at least compared with whatever the standard of drinking water was back then.
Yeah, it sounds like it was pretty bad. And I think the key was, and this is probably what did it, is that in order to ferment the wheat to make the beer, they had to heat the water. Mm-hmm, so they most likely inadvertently killed the bacteria by heating the water. Mm-hmm. That's probably what did it. Maybe it has to do with fermentation. Maybe there's a brewmaster that's listening. It's going to call me a total knucklehead for not knowing.
I'll let you know when he does, or she does.
So 4400 BCE, there's evidence of wine production in Greece. The Greeks had their own god of alcohol. It was Dionysus. And they used it as medicine. And at this point, we still haven't distilled alcohol. We only have wine. I don't think we even have mead yet. We have wine. So wine's the oldest drink. And then beer comes in around, a couple thousand years later. So they used wine, really, the Egyptians and Greeks, to treat lethargy, diarrhea, childbirth pains, to treat wounds. There's all sorts of anything you can think of. They're just like, just drink.
Just being hammered and giving birth to a child.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because
it's better than giving birth sober.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we, Aaron, Mike, and myself certainly can speak to this. As far as our experience in childbirth goes, I think I'd rather be drunk.
It was easy. I was there twice. I didn't have to do anything.
It is interesting to note that it's not a terrible sedative at higher levels, right? So there are definitely we've all had patients where we can like do all sorts of stuff and sew things up and put fractures back in joint and so on, and they don't even really notice. It doesn't hurt till later. They're like, I'm fine, and their ankles flopping around.
And they're ticked and they want to leave. And I'm
like, sir, you can't walk. Please get back in bed. Notice how I assume it's a male, but in this case, that's...
Yeah, I don't know. It has no gender. So then 1st and 2nd centuries BCE, the Roman Empire creates the wine trade. So makes wine a regional drink. 150 BCE to 350 CE, distillation is discovered. So this is when we start to get the real good stuff.
This is when we get our spirits, right? So are you going to talk about that process?
Nope. But here's the funny thing. So
I will if you don't.
In Europe, they said, so the first documented excessive use of distilled spirits dates to 1525. You're telling me that for 1200 years, whiskey or whatever exists, and then 1201 years, that's when somebody drinks too much.
Yeah, no way. Mm-mm.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing about distillation versus fermentation, because beer, wine are
Oh
fermentation.
wait, you weren't kidding.
No, I know. I used to do stuff like so. The interesting part about it, though, and because I also like to context this as a, alcohol is a poison. It is a poison. It's a poison I enjoy in moderation, as many of my Wisconsinites do, sometimes not in moderation. But to get beer or wine, you have to get sugary water, whether you take it from barley malt or you take it from grapes, and then you've put a bunch of yeast into it, and then you let them eat the sugar and then form alcohol, right? But distillation is you kind of take whatever mishmash of fermentation derived alcohol that you get, then you have to heat it and then capture the purest form of the alcohol out of it. That's the distilling. So you're just taking, if you made you make a mash out of wheat or barley, and then you let the yeast kind of start working on it, they then start make some alcohol, and then you take that alcohol out of it and just purify it by heating it. Then you've got a spirit. In that case, probably you're going to have a vodka, or you're going to have a whiskey, etc. But that's also where, if you were the first person to not know what you're doing, that first bit of alcohol that you distill off that comes out cool is methanol, and it's not ethanol. So the alcohol we drink is ethanol. Methanol is the go blind problem for like bootleggers back in the day, but it's because when you distill, that first run that comes out of the still, the first little bit is actually methanol, because it has something to do with the cooling point, blah blah blah. I don't know, but I also know that the Irish would call that the angel's share. So you'd pour that away because you don't want to drink it. It's dangerous, and methanol is super poisonous. You're welcome, Mike.
Thank you. It was very informative.
Yeah,
I'm glad you
wow.
distilled that down for us.
Yeah.
But
So 1550, public drunkenness was considered a crime. Before it wasn't. This is in Europe. I don't know where in Europe, probably in England. So in 1600, they love to regulate everybody.
Yeah.
There was a report of widespread drunkenness across all classes in 1600. So it takes 6 years. 1606, there was a law passed that was called the Act to Repress the Odious and Loathsome Sin of Drunkenness. We need acts like this. What do we get? Like the Hatch Act, the CARES Act. We need this.
we get all these, like, and it's all got this spending in it we don't want. We just have something nice and direct and with a whimsical
Those
theme.
are just like, yeah, quit drinking so much, you knuckleheads. 1650, Holland developed gin. Thanks so much, Holland. I don't appreciate gin.
You don't like gin? Oh,
No.
gin martini is like one of my top 3 cocktails.
Oh, yeah.
I'm drinking gin right now.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Is that
made a
gin and
cocktail with
juice?
Pear juice and
It is gin and juice.
and cherry juice and gin. It's really good.
1700, the Irish and Scottish start, their whiskey starts to become popular. So kind of late bloomers. This is just from what I found online, Max. I don't know. So when the English first came to the Americas, they were unaccustomed to drinking water. They felt it was unsafe to consume because when they were in England, it was unsafe to consume. They only drank really beer and alcohol, and it was kind of a currency. It was what they drank for water. And then, so when people came here, they only drank water when they couldn't afford anything else. They just thought it was kind of gross and potentially like rife with pathogens. Who was the Bolton? Was he
Michael
the
Bolton?
doc? No, the doc in the
Lord
UK.
Bolton.
The Broad Street pump. Was it Broad Street?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Aaron's episode. That's
cholera?
episode.
Cholera. Yeah.
So yeah, Aaron, you're responsible for that knowledge off the top of your head.
Off the top of my head. You could have been Michael Bolton. I think it definitely was, actually. He was known for his long flowing hair. I mean, it kind of, he's a little bald in the front, but then he had a lot of party in the back.
Yeah.
And that allowed him to be smart enough to remember that water was a contaminant. I don't remember who did
But
this.
the party in the back is just like the Americans in 1790. So they consumed an average of 5.8 gallons of alcohol.
Oh, John Snow and the Broad Street
John
Pump.
Snow.
Yep.
I was
Sorry.
thinking-
Nowhere near. Not
I
even
know.
the same neighborhood of initials.
I know, it wasn't even close.
We got there though.
Did we?
Okay, yeah. So 5.8 gallons of alcohol per person per year, and that sounds like it could be a lot.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide.
Just
how much
wait.
should we drink
Just
now,
wait.
though?
Just wait. Because I did
we're even
me.
close.
Yeah. No. Okay. So
I don't think they're even close to us.
Oh,
they're not even
yeah, because
close.
a pint. Oh,
But here's the
yeah.
thing. Okay, so we'll get to. So yeah, by 1830, peaked at 7.1 gallons per person per year. Today we average 2.3 gallons per person per year of alcohol. And I think what they're saying is like actual alcohol rather than like, let's say beer. So I put in these calculations. I was like, I'll have a couple beers per week. Usually don't have more than that, maybe occasionally. And then I did that for a year. And for me, I got like 19.5 gallons of beer per year.
Of beer, okay.
But then if it's alcohol, typically the beers, I guess I'm a little low. It'd probably be about a gallon per year of alcohol.
Because of that beer, it's like 4% beers or 5% beers. That's how much
7%.
alcohol is in the...
Right. So I don't know. If it's just beer, then I have a problem. If it's alcohol, I'm cool.
The alcohol content. Fair.
So can anybody guess the state with the most beer consumption per capita?
It has to be us.
It has to
It's
be
not.
Wisconsin. It's
It's
not
not.
us? Lies.
Per capita?
We drink
Per capita.
33.6 gallons per person per year.
Okay.
Per
Seems
capita.
respectable.
That's everybody in the state, even children.
So that means some people are doing
But we're the
more
sixth
than their
most.
fair share.
Yeah.
No way.
wow.
We're
Who's
sixth.
the first?
Sixth? Oh.
Who's above us?
And all right, is Nevada
Pennsylvania?
above us? Because not even.
Mm-mm. This is only beer.
Illinois.
This isn't like, nope.
Oh, just beer.
Just beer.
Colorado.
2 more guesses. No.
I mean, they got all the microbreweries.
I know, but they take micro sips and they don't drink very much.
All right, what about Oregon?
Texas.
Nope.
North
Alaska.
Carolina.
Nope.
Wow.
Alaska's really low too.
Hawaii.
Nope. Okay. So the most is Montana.
What?
The average that's 40.8 gallons of beer per year. That's per capita.
There's like 6 people that live in Montana and they don't know each other and they're lonely. That's why.
Yeah, I lost.
Is it really
the
cold
fifth.
there?
Yeah, it's Montana, it's New Hampshire,
Oh,
and
wow.
then the 2 Dakotas.
It's
And I don't know
northern
who the
lonely
fifth is.
states.
Yeah, probably what it was. And so like the whole reason for this was that water wasn't really treated. I didn't get into that. I know Jess is going to be mad at me.
She will be.
But it wasn't really treated until late 1800s to early 1900s. So there's probably some credence to that. It probably was safer to drink that beer at that time in that moment because of the low alcohol content. And I think that's potentially why we didn't have like really bad issues if the area that we were in was drinking beer, because they used to drink beer like on their breaks. They were paid in alcohol. People drank beer, like even kids drank beer because it was the safest thing to drink.
I remember the Guinness factory or brewery, that was part of the paycheck. I remember taking that tour and they said the paycheck was you get 2 beers on your, per shift. And that was like part of your earnings.
How many
I don't know if
fingers do you have to
declare
donate
Ooh.
inadvertently? Because you're drunk and you're operating a machine.
them. Not 2 beers.
I don't know. Can you get drunk off of Guinness? Is a light beer, right?
Well, I mean, how
Off
many
of 2?
patients have we had say
Guinness.
they've only had 2 beers and
Yeah, it's always 2
Blood
beers,
alcohol
and then they
level
pull out
is
the
they pull out a
metaphorical 2 beers.
64-ounce steel reserve. And they're like, "This is the beer."
Oh my God.
it's one quantity of that beer.
So that brings us to alcoholism. It's interesting. So remember, think about this. So the arc of alcohol, potentially 100,000 years ago, because of janky cave paintings, we presume people were drinking back then. Probably weren't. Maybe those potatoes were actually potatoes, and they're drawing paintings of making whiskey or vodka. And it's not we're misinterpreting them. These are
Fair.
potatoes. Oh my God, I just figured out this
Did you just
historical
figure it out?
Figured out petroglyphs.
significant thing. Yeah.
You should write
Put
up
me
that
on ancient
hypothesis.
aliens and I'll be a guest.
Oh,
What if? What if it were visitors from another planet that made these
That-
amazing structures?
That brought down Mike's Hard Lemonade back in ancient Egypt. Ultimately, in 1784, so 100,000 years ago,
Potatoes on the caves. Yeah.
all this time passes. Potatoes in the caves, Egyptians drinking children drinking beer, not drinking water
Mhm.
when you move to the New World. And then in 1870 or 1784, finally they defined alcoholism. Because before this, there was no definition. It was a guy named Dr. Benjamin Rush, and he defined alcoholism. It's an uncontrollable, overwhelming, and irresistible desire to consume alcohol. I mean, it sounds pretty straightforward. But this is
What
the
year
first
was that?
time, 1784. It's the first time it's ever really
Okay.
defined in print. Maybe it's oral history over the the millennia. I don't know. So the 1800s come. That's when you start to get the temperance movement. They're really just trying to control people's drinking and their behavior, the behavior that drinking brings out
Mhm.
by controlling people's access or people's desire then to drink. Essentially, like guilting the world essentially to stop drinking.
Yeah, that worked fantastically. We got rid of it.
Yeah.
We overcame the problem.
Yeah.
But we had a great
What year-
idea that came out of it. Not
Mm.
really. No. So it at that point in time, alcohol abuse was thought to be a result of the alcohol. So like if you drink alcohol, you will become an alcoholic. But then they started thinking like maybe it's something else. So they called it degenerationism.
Mm.
And they're like, well, these
Mm.
degenerates, right? So
Oh boy.
Oh,
that
geez.
moral vices would trigger a cascade of social problems, which increase in each generation until that generation ultimately became extinct.
Huh.
So
Yeah.
previous cultures
Ooh.
Right?
amorally destroyed themselves.
Yes.
Mm.
It's not just cultures, it's like lineage. So they would, let's say old timey alcohol abuse treatment center, they would come in and be like, if you want to keep drinking, that's fine, but your generational line, your family line or your family tree will die ultimately. Maybe they may have been on to something.
People always respond to really vague way in the future possible consequences for people not yet
Yeah.
born.
Well, especially back then, yeah.
That also is like, depending on the person, they might be like, great, this bloodline dies with me.
I don't like my kids anyway. I haven't met my grandkids yet.
I mean, yeah.
And this person's 15. I haven't
Oh, God. Yeah.
So 1813, doctors Pearson and Sutton, both independently, again, I don't know where they're from, I'm guessing some European country, described delirium tremens.
Mm.
Mm.
And that's just a rapid onset of confusion from withdrawal from alcohol. Typically, it's, a couple days after your last drink, if you're a heavy user. Shaking, high blood pressure, regular heart rate, sweating, confusion.
And I think like the
hallucinations.
interesting thing, so I've mentioned a few times, is that alcohol is a poison, right? And the way that it sets up like these physiologic problems is pretty, it's fascinating, but it's also troubling when you actually get behind it, because when we talk about other drugs that people are familiar with, like heroin and things like that, there is a withdrawal syndrome where your body is used to this substance, and then when you take it away, you have kind of the opposite effects of what that substance does. So alcohol is a central nervous system, like brain, spinal cord, suppressant or depressant. And so if you constantly are at high doses of it, basically your entire neurologic system is in a state of depressed function. And so what it does to try to balance itself out is it starts growing new receptors that basically at the little cellular level are reaching out and trying to find excitability molecules. We call it glutamate. There's so many of them because they're soaked in alcohol the whole time that once you take away the alcohol, your entire nervous system is just covered in these little receptors that cannot wait to be excitable and grab onto the chemicals in our body that make the nervous system alert, etc. And so you get the opposite effect where every one of these neurologic cells is basically grabbing onto the excitable molecules, and you get shaking, tremors, chills, shaking, tremors, seizures, and it can definitely result in death. And so our neurologic system biologically adapts to constant alcohol use when it's in high amounts, and that was always crazy for me to learn.
Yeah, and that makes it makes a lot of sense too. That's pretty incredible just to hear the science behind it.
Can you say that again, Max? I was totally zoning out.
The whole thing. Nice. I mean, he's into the science. I was just amazed to see people's tongues wiggle like a bunch of worms. So you get like
Wow, really?
tongue,
Fasciculations.
like tongue fasciculations. So like the muscles in your tongue will actually quiver. Yeah, it's just it is pretty scary to see people and cases of delirium tremens they'll go to the intensive care unit and need just massive amounts of medicine to try to offset the alcohol, and pretty crazy. I mean, people are like picking at things and like just shaking so much they can't even sit still, and yeah, a true case is pretty scary.
Yeah, and not all that rare.
No.
I mean, I would
definitely not in our
say
state.
daily for us probably.
Oh,
I don't think
Wow,
delirium
really?
tremens, but issues certainly tangential to alcohol use. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, true ICU level withdrawal is a little bit more rare, but
Rarer.
alcohol issues every shift for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, every shift.
I mean, maybe
Multiple.
if I start the morning shift, I get away. Well, no, because then you get the people from last night. So you got to be like
Yeah.
business hours in the middle of the week, and then you might only get 3 or 4.
And it stinks. So when people come in for treatment, they're all often drunk, or a family member wants them to come in, or they're drunk and they're emotional. They're not really like able to make great decisions. So they're making these emotional decisions. They sober up while they're there because usually this workup takes a while, and then often they get upset and they want to go, and it's kind of like nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it such a challenge. Like, and the medicine for the person's symptoms, if they're in withdrawal, is the poison that they've been drinking. It's like the
Right,
weirdest
right.
thing.
Yeah, I'd heard that before, and I was curious about that when you're talking about the massive amounts of medication. How about the for delirium tremens? Is that the same that they would need essentially some alcohol to bring the symptoms down?
Yeah, but usually they're so out of it that they can't drink. So we'd
Mhm.
use like benzodiazepines, like Ativan or something like that, IV, or like we've got a bunch of other drugs you could give.
And that's like just to suppress the nervous system.
Just
Yes.
Yeah.
filling those receptors full of the alcohol-like substance.
Yep.
Got
There's
it.
a bunch of different, they're all sedatives.
And then you just slowly ratchet it back. Yeah.
A bunch of different types of sedatives that will occupy those same receptors to allow your body to start to get back to normal, or at least get through that process, which lasts for 3 to 5 days, somewhere in
Yeah,
that
all
I
range.
think it
depends
can last
on
up to a
strain.
week, but 3 to 5 is kind of your main days for that.
The danger period, but then you're still, I mean, your brain chemistry is still changed.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
also get like chronic vitamin deficiencies, so you're chronically low on some of your B vitamins in your thiamine, which will cause brain damage and memory changes and such over the long period of time that you're kind of not getting appropriate nutrition because you're drinking instead. Oh, there's so many ways that
Yeah.
it's
Have we
harmful.
not joked about it? Yeah, I guess joked about it.
I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, it could,
But no, joked about having like thiamine and folate infused beer. Like when you
No.
drink too much, you lose thiamine and folate, but why not just add it back in? And that's Vegemite, right? Vegemite is like all the thiamine and folate and stuff that
so
is
Australians'
scraped out of the
national
beer
food
kegs.
is the scraped
the
residue
yeast
of beer kegs
byproduct
that you
of
need if you
brewing
drink too
beer.
much.
Yeah.
Well, how is that similar or different from those, like, y'all remember those chaser pill things? I remember for a long time on TV, there were commercials for like a pill you could take if you were going to be drinking so that you wouldn't have a hangover.
I've definitely heard those advertised on a few podcasts I listen to. If you go to your average gas station at the counter, they'll have like these packets of like hangover cure, blah, blah, blah. And what I assume is that the attendant in the morning goes out to the parking lot and scrapes up a bunch of dust and like just kind of forms it into a
Oh,
tablet,
God.
and they just package it and they sell it because who knows? I don't know, but I know there's some product out there. I'm not going to name it partly because I can't remember, but other partly it's like, don't want to necessarily endorse it because I don't know how it works. It might work, who knows? But it's they do have these things to try to temper the next day effect of alcohol, because what happens is you drink alcohol, your body breaks it down into a bunch of compounds, which I think is aldehydes and something else, and those are what give you the hangover. And that's, you may be dehydrated on top of it, but these basically toxic compounds are floating around your system from the night before, and they make you feel awful. So I think what the idea behind these products is that they have an enzyme in them that breaks apart the aldehydes or the other quote unquote toxins that
Yeah,
make
take
you
the
feel
enzyme pill from the gas station. That'll do it.
Right. But that, I mean,
Don't
that's kind of the
inadvertently
idea.
get the boner pills, the gas station
No.
boner pills.
No, they may not work.
Make sure you wear your readers when you buy those. You get the right
Mhm.
ones.
It's a good question,
Bifocals on.
Ella. But there are times when alcohol actually is an antidote. So Max was talking about the methanol. There's a group of toxic alcohols that are worse than the ethanol that we actually drink. So in rare cases, and up until even a few years ago when I started training, that you would see people on alcohol drips intravenously if they had inadvertently or on purpose consumed a lot of one of these more toxic alcohols, like rubbing alcohol, methanol, thinners,
Antifreeze.
antifreeze, right? So in those cases, what you did was you would actually give them enough ethanol to keep their liver busy with the ethanol, which would have less toxic less toxic metabolites than these other alcohols. Because the alcohols themselves, a lot of it is once they get broken down into these terrible poisons, so they're more toxic because of what the liver does to them. So if you keep the liver busy, it's not going to metabolize the other ones to such a high level. So
it'll go. Wait a second. So the alcohol that you give them will get to the liver faster than the other kinds of alcohols?
It's more
or
like
you
there's
just,
more of it.
Pump it more.
Yeah, you just
gotcha.
there's more, so then it'll spend less time metabolizing the toxic alcohol, and it'll do it more slowly, I believe, would be the sort of a replacement.
Wow.
I think I have a weird analogy I just thought of for that. Like, your liver is a busy toddler, okay? And the busy toddler, the poison, the ethylene glycol, it's antifreeze, is like right there, and they're about to like grab it. And you're like, no. Here's something else to occupy you, liver. Work on this, and you give them the alcohol. I think the toddler part's really weird in this context.
No, toddler. It's
No,
an
that's-
iPad. It's an iPad.
You
Just give the
give-
toddler an
give the
iPad.
toddler
Right?
an
Yeah,
iPad.
but it's alcohol.
So they don't play.
So now
with
the liver's like,
yeah.
ooh, I'm gonna work on this
poop.
alcohol, and then in the meantime, you're in the background taking away the ethylene glycol.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
kidneys are kind of kicking it out, but it's not getting to the liver to do damage.
Or getting dialyzed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now there's like a product that it's I think it's fumepazole is what it's called, but it
Oh,
does the
yeah.
same thing, but it doesn't make you intoxicated. But old timey antidote for those would be to legitimately like go out and get the patient like a giant bottle of Fleischmann's and say,
There's
okay,
a loading
for
dose.
now
There's
you're
a
gonna-
loading dose.
Yeah, there's
In
like
oral
Five
loading
shots.
Yep.
5 shots of oral alcohol.
So
It has to be a hard liquor, though. It has to be a spirit.
yeah, the other way it would show up in medicine is that on the trauma floors, especially up until again the time that I was in training, you could order a Miller High Life on the trauma unit on a regular basis for patients that were such chronic alcoholics. They had injured themselves, they didn't want to quit drinking, and the cheapest way to kind of keep them from going into withdrawal would be to order beer to the bedside essentially, and say, okay, well, we're just going to give this to you because we know you're not going to stop, and if you go into alcohol withdrawal, it's going to be way worse.
Wow.
I have not actually seen that, but I think the order still existed when I started. It just wasn't kind of.
Oh, I have. Yeah, I've
seen the
it
beer
my
in the
training.
fridge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just I mean it. So it definitely still shows up in medicine. I mean, it's sort of a constant.
Now listeners are going to go in and they're going to be like,
Hey, can I have a beer?
in for an
Beer.
appendix.
It's like, how many times have you heard that joke? Hey, do you need anything? Like, well, how about a martini? You're like, nah.
Yeah, and I
no, we
think it
don't have
was,
that.
it was either light or high life. It might have been even
It was a
Hamm's.
Miller. It's
No.
definitely a Miller product,
Well,
Okay, so 1910, the first time that alcohol withdrawal is noted. The first time in history, you guys. Like,
That
I don't
was
know. And again,
described.
this is,
oh, it definitely happened. They just
It
didn't
happened.
make
It's
the
got
connection.
it's described. Yeah.
They're just like, let's not talk about that.
it's my favorite journal now. It's the Journal of Inebriety.
Ooh.
Like inebriated,
Uh-huh.
the journal of, so if it's noted in the Journal of Inebriety, it must have been known that there is inebriation prior to that, because the journal is named after inebriation.
Mhm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But maybe that was like a toxicology journal back in the day. So fast forward to 1919, this is where prohibition kicks in. It was the 18th Amendment. It's called the Volstead Act in 1919.
Super popular across the board.
Yep. Alcohol could only be produced or sold for medical or religious reasons. And it lasted till 1933. And of course, you get guys like Al Capone and bootleggers and all that other stuff. People did decrease drinking for a while after 1919. But then,
Did they though?
Yeah, apparently. As far as we know, right? People still illegally made and drank alcohol. It was just a hard time. So it was actually reversed because like the Great Depression happened and they thought like, man, we really need people working. We could probably open up these distilleries and these beer places again and just do it. A lot of it was financial and a lot of it was like just went through this major conflict and then we started drinking again. Then we entered into a war. Maybe we shouldn't have been drinking. If we were sober, maybe it would have been like, hey, wait a second. Why don't we just wait? Oh. And then the Germans in 1940, they were probably pretty good with treating alcohol. Wait, no, they weren't. And so there was forced sterilization of alcoholics because of the degenerationism.
Oh, because the moral tying
that's what I
and
don't like, that
downfall
social
of
Darwinism.
Yep. So they would sterilize alcoholics because it's not, a part of a pure race. And there's no number of how many people at the Nazis, how many alcoholics were murdered by the Nazis.
Man,
they murdered lots of people.
They really did.
I mean, that's a new wrinkle, I mean,
yeah. Think of that the next time you drink a Hacker Shore.
just when you think you've heard all the bad things they did, you're like, oh, and
wow, that too. Yeah.
Then, and you can't say Germans. You have to say Nazis, not Germans.
Nazis, yeah.
But yeah, that whatever. Just another little knock on that time. Prior to this, I jumbled up a little bit. 1935, Dr. Bob Smith, he formed Alcoholics Anonymous, which is still operating to this day. People have mixed feelings about it. I think it's like the benchmark to treating addiction. I don't know if maybe there's better, newer modalities. A lot of it's religious. So, some people don't get on board with it, but I mean, it is what it is. It still exists. He came up with it really long time ago. The American Medical Association in 1952 first defined alcohol addiction. So again, like in our country too.
Well, it didn't exist before then.
No, it
until they defined it. No, they defined it then. You can't.
So smallpox, right? They treat this back in the day. And influenza, we know what it is. Like all that other stuff. Alcohol has existed for the amount of time that probably a lot of these viruses had, but it doesn't get recognized as a problem until like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Just crazy. In 1955, the World Health Organization acknowledged that alcohol issues can cause very serious withdrawal symptoms such as convulsions or delirium if you discontinue heavy alcohol intake. That's 1955. This is like something that people probably have known for a millennia.
Sure.
But it was still a problem it was like an issue with the drug rather than the person, right? So it wasn't like considered a disease. In the 60s, they finally start to say like, maybe this is a little bit more complex than we thought. Like why can some people drink and some people can't? Why do some people...
in the 60s, they were notoriously clear-headed and so I'm sure they were thinking...
They're like, alcohol's bad, LSD is totally fine.
They were doing all the other drugs and it gave them time to think about alcohol a little bit more.
Okay, so the Germans, they redeemed themselves in the 60s. So in 1968, German federal courts formally confirmed that insurance coverage for alcohol-related medical treatment.
Oh.
So before that, if you went into the hospital and you were drunk, they're like, you're not covered.
Yeah.
For like alcohol treatment, because it wasn't thought to be a medical issue. Again, in the 50s, we start to see like, wow, people are actually like dying from withdrawal and this is kind of a big deal and this is really complex and people aren't getting better with normal stuff. And that's why like Alcoholics Anonymous pops in.
Mm-hmm.
It's really because people aren't getting better. Why aren't they getting better? So fewer than 10% of alcoholics ever enter treatment, which is an abysmal number.
That's up to date stat?
Up to date.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, if you think about that, again, what I said earlier was that alcoholism exists in the darkness, like it's a secret. And there are so many people that like you might live with somebody that's got an issue with alcohol and not quite know it, like something might be off. People hide things, it's one of the more frustrating things for us to take care of, but we know, right? And like our approach is one of caring and like just be open and honest with us. But so many times people look at you and they're drunk as hell. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I had 2 beers. I think Aaron, both of us are old enough to know, like, hey, that's not right. That's not true.
The more you know.
2 beer. Yeah, the more you know.
Very cool.
2 bathtubs full of beer? Maybe.
Well, so you can do math, right? So you get the lab, and alcohol is metabolized by the body in a steady state. So you will take away a set number of the alcohol in your body over time on an extremely linear straight line.
Like, you cannot speed it up.
Nope, you can't speed it up.
Okay.
So
you can
for the
just
most part,
calculate it.
so like there are some things like you might have a slight variation over time, but in the short time frame, like that's over years, you might be like, okay, well, this like a chronic alcoholic may be a little faster than me, but you can calculate backwards. Be like, oh, the legal limit's 0.08. Well, that's it's approximately what, 0.02 per drink, and then you take away around 0.01, and if you're a chronic alcoholic, 0.02 per hour, something like that. Correct? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So like you can do the math. If somebody comes in, you have folks in a festival in the summertime, and legal limit's 0.08, and you have people that are like 0.6. So, and then you just kind of divide that
0.6. When have you ever seen a 0.6?
I've seen a
Or you mean 0.06?
No, I mean, I've seen a point like the absolute upper limit of human consumption where there's still not in a comas. I've seen a 0.6, but that's chronic hardcore alcoholic at a summer festival in a Midwestern town known for drinking already. And so then you're like, okay, well, that's the equivalent of like 30 drinks, right? And I don't know if that's, I mean, the human,
It ain't good, that's for sure.
right? So then you look at him, you're like, it's not 2 drinks, bro. It's like, so like,
Holy
like you can't hide the number.
God.
It is what it is. Like, this is how many drinks you had to get to this number.
Yeah. The hard one is the people that the family members are concerned that had strokes, and then you got a gut feeling, so you check an alcohol level and it's high.
Yeah.
It's like 0.28, 0.3. Then this person now is speaking clearly, and you've got to tell that family, often it's like, hey, are you okay with me sharing information about what I found? Like,
and then they're not going to be like, no. I mean, it's a little bit.
Yeah. They usually give you a look, and it's like, if you want them to step out, I'll ask them to step out. Otherwise, we can have a frank conversation, because you need to have it anyway.
Yeah.
And, like, they didn't have a stroke. They're drunk. You're like, oh, I thought you hadn't touched alcohol in years. No, I didn't. But you're a 0.3 and you're talking to me. So, like, you do. You're habituated to alcohol.
Yeah.
That's...
And even with treatment, most alcoholics relapse. So that's the other kind of the talk that I have with people. It's like, it's not a sprint. A lot of times people want to come into the hospital and they want to get detox and then they're good. It's like, this is a marathon, man. Like, this is the rest of your life. Like,
I lived with an alcoholic, and it was very much that, like, the number of times of, no, okay, I'm like a one really, really bad night, and, okay, I'm never going to drink again. I'm totally done. And then, a slow trickle in a year, 2 years later, and, one drink and then a weekend drink. And it's insidious is the word that comes to mind, because it's like, it's on such a spectrum. And I feel like we've been socialized to think of, like, and it makes sense hearing you talk about the morality of it and how people thought about the morality of it, because I feel like we still see that today with, like, you're an alcoholic and you're a bad person, or you don't have a problem with alcohol and you're a good person. And that's kind of it. Those are your 2 options. Like, that's how I feel like the perspective that I grew up with. And the reality is that it's such a spectrum. Like, I had no idea that this person had a problem with alcohol for a long time, because I was like, no, we're just, people just drink, we're just having, you get drunk, and then, and honestly, I'm sure I've had problematic periods with alcohol too. So it's like, it's hard to know, on that spectrum, where to see, like, hey, yeah, actually, this was not just a bad night. Like, this is something I got to do something about.
And it is insidious. It creeps up on you, and before you even know it, like, not even you specifically, but people that you care about. You might, after the fact, then like, oh, like, the writing was on the wall. It's all there. And it's hard because it's like Jekyll and Hyde type stuff. Like the people that we take care of, like, I'm sure Aaron and Max, like, we've taken care of, like, our chronic drunks. And then when you see them when they're sober, like, let's say they were arrested and incarcerated, and that's the only way they could stay clean. They're often like just the nicest people. And the hard part is like every person absolutely wants to quit. And then they get so upset when they don't quit that their coping mechanism is to drink. So it's like,
yeah. And the shame associated with, getting help, even those words sometimes, seeking help, I think can be stigmatizing, because then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not someone who can help myself. I'm someone who has a problem and needs help. And I think also as an organization, I love AA and I think that they do really great work, but group therapy is not necessarily for everyone. I think a lot of people, especially the person I lived with, were a lot of people have trouble with the idea of sharing with a room full of strangers the worst moments in their life. Like,
yeah.
Who wants to go talk to a room full of strangers right now about the dumbest shit they've ever done?
Mm-hmm.
Not me. I would much rather try to deal with it on my own before anybody ever finds out that I have this problem. And so, in that light, it's like, wow, more different treatment options, I feel like, should be made more available, like individual treatment options, just one-on-one treatment, medication management options, versus like, I think a lot of the information that or a lot of the reason that people don't self-identify is, or say like, hey, yeah, you know what, I think I will, is the idea that it's going to be group therapy with strangers, and B, the shame associated with it and stigmatization.
Mm-hmm.
One quick plug for a previous episode we did, and that is, if you're a newer listener or you maybe overlooked it, I did an interview with Emily Sweeney, who wrote the book on Dr. Dropkick Murphy, who, yes, there's a lot of wrestling references, but he was an early addictionologist, physician who started some forms of alcohol treatment way back in the 1930s to 1950s in the Boston area. It was fascinating. And so if this is a topic of interest to you, like it's a really cool, it's a good episode, sure, but it's a good book to check out. So I'm going to plug that here.
Oh yeah. And then I put in, just because again, alcohol issues are so challenging, I'll send to you, Max, for the show notes. Like, if you feel like you want to seek help, or, somebody you care about, there's a bunch of resources available.
By all means, I'll put them in there. Well, I think that about does it. So, Alba, since you are the medical history intern of this medical history podcast with the most extensive expletive vocabulary, what do you think is the most interesting take home from today's episode?
How the nervous system responds to alcohol, and just that whole process of the receptors and then the treatment of it. That's really incredible.
Cool. Glad to contribute. Well, we appreciate everyone listening, and we'd love to hear from all of you out there. If you'd like to check out our merchandise or provide feedback, we can reach through our website, www.poorhistorianspod.com. There you can send us messages and find links to our social media sites. We do work to respond to all posts on those accounts. If you're looking for a way to contribute to the show and dispose of a few extra dollars you have lying around the house, or you just want to check out the bonus content or be a special part of the House of Medical History, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/poorhistorianspodcast. And lastly, a free way to support us is just tell a friend about us, or go leave a nice 5-star review on Spotify, iTunes, or whichever platform you choose. We always appreciate those, and they help us find more listeners. Till next time, the Poor Historians are signing out. AMA.